Just to take that a little step further, yes, all my kids' names start with A. They also all have the same initials, ALL, which is the same initials as my husband. There's a 10-year difference between my husband and I, and let's just say I was young, and we've been married now. It has been going on, I think it's 18 years, but I was young. And the first thing he said to me is, because I can't carry the kids, I should at least name them. And I thought that at that time that was my 20-something-year-old self, that was the sweetest thing ever. And so then as he said, well, I just want their initials to be ALL, and that's how we landed here. So nonetheless, that same naivety does not fly this, right now as we talk about the 40-year-old self person that you're looking at right now, but he got me, so it's fine. But yes, my name is Cheryl Long. I'm the 18th City Manager. Thank you for the amazing introduction, but at the end of the day, I cannot do this alone. We have 6,000 employees, but I have some amazing team members that every day give me the recommendations on what we should be doing on behalf of all Cincinnatians. And what I would tell you is it is a great day in City Hall. It is a great time in City Hall. I've been into City Hall since 2016. And interestingly, prior to that, the great thing is what I was very excited about is to come and work with a strong mayor. In the city of North Carolina is a city administrator form of government, and so essentially you have a part-time mayor who you still work very closely with, but in the same sense, the administrator is the one that kind of is the CEO who does everything in the city. And so it was interesting for me to see what it worked with a mayor who is very strong, who knows exactly what direction he wants to go, and just curious, it was just a different dynamic. And coming in City Hall, learning with Cranley and everything, it was just an amazing experience for me. I learned a lot. One thing about me is that how I become the leader I am today is by learning from every leader that I have, the good, the bad, the terrible, and all those things, right? If it's great, I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna use it. If it's terrible, I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna note it, and I'm gonna make sure that I don't show up that way as a leader. That's the way that I am. I problem solve that way, that's kind of my vibe. And interestingly, from there, we had Mayor Avtab Pureval, and he selected me as a city manager with the confirmation of council. And what I will tell you is we are a true partnership. He admits what he doesn't know. He leans on me for those things that he does know, and we are always working together, and if we agree to disagree, that is fine as well. And what I will tell you is that with our form of government, he allows me to, if there's anything dealing with employees, if it's anything dealing with recommendation on behalf of the budget, that is the city manager. He will say all day long, charter. The charter states this is my lane, this is her lane, and that is amazing because it allows us to be able to work in partnership with each other, but he then knows when to deviate to me. And the great thing is I think there's amazing things that have happened on behalf of the city of Cincinnati. So I'm gonna lean in on my formal remarks. I'm gonna kind of be moving pen paper because I don't have anything to hold this on, but forgive me and give me a little bit of grace. I just left a meeting with CPS schools, and I think that speaks to kind of the collaboration that we're talking about in the city. We were wanting to be in support with the school district and make sure that we were there as they had a community meeting to see if there's anything that we could take back to be in partnership with them. And so I'm a little bit discombobulated, so I want to take my city manager hat and put that back on at the moment. But as we said, good evening, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak. I always appreciate the opportunity to talk about the exciting work of city employees and the many ways we are moving forward at City Hall. To start, as it was mentioned, I'll just take a moment to introduce myself. I'm Cheryl Long, City Manager of Cincinnati. I oversee the everyday operations of the city and its 6,000 employees and help execute the policy vision of the mayor and city council. I just celebrated, as was mentioned, my 2 years in the role on September 1st, and I'm grateful for this position and chance to serve this city I call home. It is incredibly exciting to see the hard work of our many employees and the success we've experienced in my time as city manager. And I never take this role for granted. Cincinnati is my home. I am born and raised city of Cincinnati, and so it's so great to be given the opportunity to lead it. I often refer to my staff as Team No Sleep because the work never ends, but I can tell you all, we are all committed to continuous improvement. I think you see the positive results of all that work as Cincinnati continues to come in conversations across the country in new spaces and incredible new opportunities. like being named a finalist for the future host of the Sundance Film Festival. Round of applause, guys. That's awesome, right? It's unlikely we would have been such a strong candidate a decade ago, and we want to build off that momentum. One of the things tonight is how the city works. I'm going to flip that just a little bit to talk about how you can work with the city. Our city structure is a little different than most. For my part, I don't make policy decisions. I stay in my lane. I do not make those policy decisions, y'all. You won't hear me offer an opinion on an upcoming vote or an election. That's the role of the mayor and council, and I am happy that they do that, and I don't have to. My administration takes the policies enacted by our elected officials and charter amendments passed by our citizens and formalize them in the work we do every day. And when our elected officials follow and respect the charter guidelines, which they are very good at doing, it enables me and my administration to do our jobs as they should be done. We are very fortunate to have good and productive relationships with our mayor and council members. Getting back to the implementation of policies, an example that tops my mind is the sale of the Cincinnati Southern Railway. Oh, I appreciate you so much, although I am a public servant, so we go with the flow. This is very helpful for me. And we have budget decisions, so sometimes this may not be affordable. Okay, but it enables me and my administration to do our jobs as you should. So we're going back to Southern Railway. While my administration did not advocate for or against the sale, voters decided to sell that former city asset. The funds from the sale were invested by the board of the railway, who oversees them and transfers funds to the city annually. Cincy on Track is how we track the money every year. Since the sale was only finalized this spring, we have not yet received our first payment from the fund, but we are already tracking the information and have created a public dashboard so everyone can see where those funds are going every year. This is a part of the annual budget process, and that's where you can really get involved. Throughout the budget process, the city hosts engagement sessions, so please stay involved so we can hear your concerns and direct funds where they are most needed. Now, one of the major things about that is sometimes we tend in the city to keep things very high level. And what I'm trying to do and what I encourage the team to do is let's bring it down so everybody can understand. So for instance, if you've ever attended some of our budget sessions, you're gonna see things like game shows that are popping up, right? Everybody loves a good game show. So what we've done is we've taken a game show and like we'll do Wheel of Fortune or something like that in our budget team. Is like, how much do you think this costs, right? To give people perspective on, you know, you may get this from Home Depot and it may cost $5, but you're gonna get it from somewhere else that the city uses and it's probably cost $15,000, right? But those are things ways that we're trying to let people understand so that everybody can understand what we're doing from a very simple way, right? From the fourth grade kid in the classroom, we want that to translate to the adult who is a PhD. Some of the things is, you know, in government, I feel, and especially somebody who focuses on communication, that we tend to talk at people as if they're always a PhD. And I don't want to think that hard when I'm trying to learn from my government. And so some people may say, hey, we don't appreciate it. You may think I'm dumb when you do that. Why did you do it that way? Well, at the end of the day, in order to be engaged, you should not have to read a thesis statement, right? It should be very simple for us to be able to communicate to you in a way so that you can sit there and give your feedback without having to think about what I just put in before you. And so those are the examples when we talk about our budget and how your funds and how your city dollars are worked, that I want to make sure that throughout every department in City Hall, we're bringing it down to the basic level, giving you an opportunity to engage without having to make it too complicated. Let's keep it simple. And that is something that's very, very important for me. But this money going back to the railroad, this money is specific to existing infrastructure projects, so our transportation department, parks, recreation, health, and public services, all get those funds to help address our deferred maintenance needs. That means funding repaving our roads, improvement projects at our health and recreation centers, and upgrades at some of our largest city facilities. Y'all see a lot of these speed humps on Clifton Avenue? Raise your hand if you've seen them. I know you all seen them. I live off Greendale. I see them all the time. Railroad can pay for that, just so you know. But once the public approved the sale, it was incredibly important to me to build transparency into the process. So every year you will know exactly how that money is spent. So if you all were to get your phones out or had access to internet, you can go to Google Cincy on Track. Cincy on Track will tell you the plan of where the railroad dollars will go. You will see a dashboard. Now the dashboard will be a delay. There will be a slight delay because when we get the money from budget, that then goes into departments for us to figure out where it's going to go, and then it goes deployed on the street. So the dollars will be reflective of what you're seeing out your front door. And that's important for us, because how do you hold me accountable? By making sure that what we pass on the budget and what we said was, what council passes on the budget and what we recommended to council, making sure that it follows through to something you see, feel, touch. That's the important thing, is to see, feel, touch. A lot of people get so frustrated because they're like, I don't see where my dollars are going. But when you're able to see it every day, when you're able to see a speed hump, a sidewalk, a public employee, those are your dollars coming to work, and they're showing up in many different ways. And so we're trying to find that through our infrastructure spending as well, and the railroad. Because what we also figured out is people had no clue we had a railroad. They were like, what the heck, you have a railroad? And it turns out that we just put it in our capital program. Like it was another fund that fed our capital. And so we're like, hey, let's break it apart. There's now the railroad dollars, there's our capital. Let's show where the railroad dollars are going, right? It's public money. Let's make sure we're being transparent about it. As long as we have receipts and we're showing what we're doing with it, there's nothing to be scared about, right? So it's a very exciting for us to be able to do that, and we're very happy to do it. Okay, so we are also doing work outside those railroad funds to improve the roads and safety of all who travel around Cincinnati, whether a car, a bike, or a foot. Now you may wonder why I'm talking about roads a lot, because we do a survey, and one of the major issues that come up, you guys, is roads. Roads, potholes, navigating pedestrian safety. So I'm going to be hitting a little heavy on that. So my apologies, but data says that this is an important topic for everyone. But in December 2022, City Council passed Complete Streets, which requires our Department of Transportation and Engineering to improve safety features every time a road is built or repaved. We also receive annual requests from community councils addressing the highest priorities needs in their neighborhoods. In the last 18 months, the city has completed more than 500 safety improvements, more than 100 traffic calming measures, and more than 170,000 square feet of new widened sidewalks, while also adding more than 4 miles of new bike lanes. That is data. That is where we're showing you where your dollars are going. Glenway Avenue was a major project that's been completed, and areas like Harrison Avenue and Victory Parkway are up next. Just this year alone, more than 60 pedestrian safety projects are slated for construction in 27 neighborhoods. The pedestrian safety projects are prioritized according to the community councils identified as the greatest need in their area. So if you have concerns about a road or intersection in your neighborhood, talk to your community council. The city recognizes that people in our neighborhoods know their area best and can identify the needs around their homes. That's why we rely on community councils to be the voice of their community. I also want to talk about community funding opportunities, because the city gets a lot of requests for money. A lot of requests for money. That is the most stressful. That's why I don't play Monopoly no more. And I tell you, when I sit there and I play Monopoly, my family is like, why are you automatically like going bankrupt very quick? It's because this is like work all together, okay? I don't want to buy an asset. I don't want to put a building on it. I don't want to make a decision. I'm tapping out, okay? Because I am stressed. That is what it feels like being in City Hall sometimes. So we are getting asked for a lot of money. And we must responsibly deploy dollars in our neighborhoods. There are several great opportunities that the city funds and other organizations help implement. There's Boots on the Ground through the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. The city provided $650,000 this year to fund small community-based organizations with programming that focuses on housing, food and health care access, gun violence prevention, workforce and youth development, and substance use services. Each grant is up to $25,000 and helps grassroots organizations build upon the foundational work they're doing. We also have the Safe and Clean Fund administered by Keep Cincinnati Beautiful. To date, the city has funded more than $900,000 worth of projects that include improvements like lighting, security, cameras, murals, and community gardens. These projects are focused on placemaking and enhancing our neighborhoods while addressing blight. I'm also incredibly proud of the work of our Office of Environmental Sustainability as they work towards the goals outlined in the Green Cincinnati Plan, which includes achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. You guys see these storms. We just got hit by one just recently, right? And this is the thing. They are not getting the storms are getting even more heavier rains. We're seeing amazing trees. When I drove around the community after the storm, my heart broke because I saw trees that had been here since my grandmother's grandmother that had taken time to flourish, roots, and they were broken apart and just left on the ground, right? That is so many stories and so much part of our history that just eliminated in a matter of a storm, right? And so when we talk about what is going on with our environment, this is acting out right in front of us. This is a serious commitment that the city has had, and we will continue to make sure that we prioritize that here. But as you know, it's not just about the city of Cincinnati. It takes the entire world in order for us to do this, right? But this year, we are making sure that we're doing our part. And the city, along with Greater Cincinnati Foundation and Green Cincinnati Fund Advisory Committee, awarded 19 grassroots nonprofits nearly $200,000 through the Seeds of Change grant program. The projects from these partners will impact 22 Cincinnati neighborhoods by focusing on urban agriculture, tree planting, and energy efficiency, among others, with about 3/4 of the funds going towards low-income communities. I want to pivot now to address some of the ongoing work to engage our youth and reduce violent crime. Last year was a bad year for youth involved with gun crimes, and I'm so happy to share that this year we've seen a 50% reduction in those crimes. But let me be clear, that is not enough. 50%, yes, it's great to say that we see a reduction, but nobody has taken that as a huge lap, because in the world we're living in, it is terrible to see how many guns are hitting the street and how many people are living their lives. I like to take this moment because at the end of the day, I am transparent and I am who I am. Prior to becoming city manager, it was through the process, I lost my sister to gun violence. And that story takes it a little bit further because I'm your city manager. At that time, I was assistant city manager. And so to receive it, through my cell phone, I receive text messages throughout the city of what crime is happening. And when you receive a message from your father who says he thinks that your sister has passed away or got shot, and you see on the text message that it's a female and 2 men, and you're like, hold on, is this really my family member? She was 23. And you have to call the chief at that time. She was assistant chief at that time, I believe. I can't even remember at this moment, was I sworn in or not? But nonetheless, when you call her, and Thiji was the one to let me know and that I had to identify, she was interim, I had to identify my sister. And I had to communicate that to my mother. And so at the end of the day, when we talk about the crime that's going on in this city, I am intimately aware of how it changes a family. Because I had to step in to help my nephew who was needing mental health support. And then I saw how long it takes for us and what is the processes so we can identify a body and what does that look like. And then I saw the amazing work of Karen Rumsey, which is our employee of CPS, of Cincinnati, of the police department, who assisted with helping us navigate that, right? But I'm telling you, so this job is not just a job for me. What I do is I have been experienced firsthand of how we talk about this gun safety. And so don't think when I look at the stats that I'm just saying it as a win. I will forever be indebted to making sure that I do what I can to make sure that if I can, there is never a time, unfortunately, with all the guns that nobody will ever not be able to suffer from the effects of gun violence. But what we will do in the city of Cincinnati, as long as that I'm here, is we will continue to fight for it. So I just want to make sure that you understand that, because sometimes as a city manager, people think that I'm desensitized from the things that are going on the street, and that is not the truth, and I want you to know that, so I'm being completely transparent. So with that being said, regarding the 50% reduction, There are many things that have contributed to that reduction, and we thank all of our community partners who have stepped up to help us in those efforts. From a city perspective, we looked at where we can provide safe spaces, mentors, and intentional funding opportunities to reduce violence among our youth and in our neighborhoods. It started with a challenge to our Cincinnati Recreation Commission to open all 24 of our pools this summer and provide weekend programming for teens when school is out of session, and boy did they deliver. CRC was able to open all 24 pools for the first time since before the pandemic, thanks to some amazing recruiting efforts from our Human Resource Department. That was a huge win. These are affordable safe spaces for kids to go to during the day, and many of these employees are kids in the community. So the city is providing them with good paying jobs and hopefully a pipeline to a career with the city, while also having a space to cool off and hang out with their friends. Then Recreation got really creative and launched Rec at Night. This teen-specific program was held every Saturday at Lincoln and Hirsch Rec Centers in the West End and Avondale, and got kids off the streets and engaged and proactive with city staff. Now, the reason why we chose those centers is because data showed that those were the highest crime areas of the city, and so we said we need to provide an opportunity that's within walking distance for these kids to be able to benefit from. This was a huge success, with hundreds of kids showing up every weekend to enjoy the bounce houses, barbers, nail techs, and free food that are available until 11 p.m. This was missing in our city, and once it was made available, it was clear how badly we need to activate these spaces for our kids. As part of this push to engage our youth, I started a Youth Managers Advisory Group, or YMAG. I have 2 boys who are now in college, so I know firsthand how difficult it can be to talk to teens and how important it is to break down those barriers. I want to hear from our high schoolers about the difficulties they face and their ideas to improve Cincinnati. We had dozens of teenagers apply, and we are getting ready to launch YMAG this fall. The work is not done, but I'm incredibly proud of how the city has shown up this year, and especially this summer, to be there for our kids. Another engagement initiative that my office and the mayor's office has undertaken is to increase gender diversity on city boards and commissions. That is a great opportunity for you to engage with the city, but the issue is that many people didn't know how to do it, right? They don't know where to go. We are collaborating with the Women's Fund of the Greater Cincinnati Foundation by supporting Appointed, a nonpartisan initiative aiming at preparing and empowering women to serve on civic boards and commissions. Gender diversity on boards and commissions is vital to ensuring that a wide range of perspectives and experiences are represented in decision-making processes. Diverse leadership fosters more innovative solutions, enhances collaboration, and improves the overall effectiveness of civic governance. By actively promoting gender diversity, we are working to create a more inclusive and equitable city that benefits all its residents. And man, do we have boards and commissions. Right now, we're going to be actively looking for, one that's going to be coming up is working for the CMHA board. When we talk about housing affordability, that is going to be significant, and we want to make sure that the people on that board are assisting us with making sure that the CEO of CMHA is definitely hearing from the board and being able to outwardly report on the work that he is doing. Accountability is very important. I have counsel that holds me accountable. It's important to have these boards making sure that they report out to those people, individuals that are supposed to be running organizations that are taking care of our most vulnerable population. And so there will be plenty of opportunities with that, and we would love to see as many people as possible try to raise their hand to participate in these boards and commissions. We have sidewalk boards. We have, you name it, it's a board. And it may not be interesting at first. You might be like, why do I care about a sidewalk? But then when you have that person that has an argument about the sidewalk boards of appeals, and they're like, I shouldn't have had to pay for that sidewalk, or their tree root did that, and they can go through a sidewalk boards of appeal, this all matters, you guys. It really, really does. So just don't look at a board and say, this looks boring. There might be some really interesting service. Who watched Parks and Rec? I'm telling you what, that tells there are some really interesting stories that comes from, it's your own version of Parks and Rec. If you don't want to be, if you not want to be a city employee, join a board and commission. I'm just saying. I have a weird personality. I like to laugh. I like to joke. I'm sorry, this might be a lot, but just be happy that you're not one of my employees that have to deal with this 24/7, just so you know. All right, so as part of the effort, the city will regularly notify the Women's Fund of vacancies on manager-appointed and mayor-appointed boards and commissions, ensuring these opportunities are shared with members of appointed program. Just this year, 2 African American women, appointed members, have been appointed to the Urban Forestry Advisory Board, reflecting our ongoing commitment to increasing both gender and racial diversity in leadership roles. These are just a few of the initiatives we are working on to make Cincinnati a city of growth, equity, and opportunity. You can join us in our mission to improve the lives of every Cincinnatian. Of course, my role as city manager is not political in nature, but we encourage our residents to take an interest and be engaged in their local government and to advocate for what is important to them and their family. This includes making your voice heard at polling booths. Because at the end of the day, you are effectively, you're hiring my bosses. You're voting for my bosses. I have a lot of them, okay? Can you imagine having 9 bosses? No, seriously, can you imagine? 9 bosses who all have different personalities, have different ways of doing things, have different expectations on how to be communicated to, have different priorities, have different this, literally. And guess what? I meet with every one of them every week because we have council every Wednesday, right? But you know what? It's not that bad. Because honestly, you have some great elected officials. And I'm not just saying this because they're my bosses. I really, I would start stuttering and just having a horrible time if I was telling you, because I'm not a good, the other word. They are really legitimately people who care about the interests of Cincinnati. And also, at the end of the day, they care about their community. And when you have that passion, that's very important. And I love being a part of them. But the voting is important. We have major elections coming up. And also, why those elections matter is because when you think about it, if you heard about the Brent Spence Bridge, right? We got tons, we have the largest investment that has happened in federal government history because of the investment that happened in the Brent Spence Bridge. And what we're going to be doing with that is huge. But that also tied to, the federal government had people in office that said, hey, we're going to start seeing interest in Cincinnati, right? We have Congress's landsman support. We have this is a great time, and we have a mayor who honestly, it's like when he walks through DC, it's like you're with a pop star. It's like really utterly annoying and ridiculous, but he's like loved up there. But in the same sense, what that does is it gives us resources and opportunities. Without that federal dollars that are continuously coming through, there's limitations on what we can do. And I have never seen as much as what we're getting currently. And that is why elections matter. And we are now, so we just had a trip in DC, and we're talking about homelessness, and we're saying, what do we think is going to happen? Trying to talk to all of our lobbyists and talk to people who have specialties in the business, and they're like, we have no clue. Because it depends on the election. Either we're going to have resources or we're not going to have resources. And what does that do from a planning perspective? That's difficult for us, right? Because we don't know what we're going to have. If we're going to continue to get the abundance of resources to help fight these things or not. That is why elections matter. They do. It is a trickle down from the federal to the state to the local. We need help, and what we try to do is making sure is that we are with all of our elected officials, regardless of an R or a D or an I. And in the same sense, I think that in the grand scheme of things, is everybody just wants to champion who got them in office, right? And so what we're trying to do is let everyone know, if you give Cincinnati the ball, we're going to dunk it every time, and that's what we've basically been doing. So we got an election coming up. We'll see how that goes, you guys. But serving as city manager is an honor, but it's also a 24/7 job. When I do have the luxury of little downtown time, and now that my 2 sons are away at college, I like to take my 2 little rescues, Roku Theodore and Peabody Long, and we go get a nice little drive through the city of Cincinnati, and then I stop and get their pup cups. And that is the best time. If you ever hear 2 dogs barking from one end to the other, there's a little black car, that would probably be me, because I'm just letting you know I spoiled them to death, but they are my hearts, and that is my joy. But it is true that, I am so happy to be speaking of joy. It was a pleasure being here this evening. And I'm sorry I'm a little obnoxious, probably making you laugh and you feel like just listening to your videos and learning about the charter. But it has been great talking, and the things that Team Cincy is doing, we're keeping our city operating and moving forward. And I'm excited and scared and all those things about the questions you're probably going to answer me. So yeah, we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl.
No problem.
Thank you very much. This is how we're going to run the question period. She's going to keep the microphone up here, and you're going to ask the question. Please try to speak as loud as I am, and then she'll repeat the question, summarize, and then try to answer that question. So, who would like to ask the first question out there? Yes, the man right, the lady right there. Would you stand up and ask the question?
You mentioned urban,
Forestry?
well, not just urban forestry, but agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk more about that program? What?
Yeah. So we have
Repeat the question.
Oh yeah. So we talked about urban agriculture and talk about that program a little bit more. So we have a whole urban forestry division that is an extension of the Parks Department. So for instance, when you saw all the trees that were knocked over throughout the storm, that did not come from our public service for handle. That was the urban forestry division of Parks. And so what they do is there's also a special assessment that I believe is put on your tax bill that that goes specifically to replanting and done of trees. So the goal is that I say Park Department, our urban forestry always existed, but this assessment I would say existed probably about, Patrick Duhaney was city manager at that time. And it was a determination that there needed to be funds to make sure that we are making sure that for instance, the trees that went down, that we're replacing them with trees that are appropriate for sidewalks, that are not going in and affecting your plumbing in your home, that are appropriate trees that also help with the environmental concerns that we're having with the sun and all those things, right? And so you also should see where they have the free, there's a couple times a year where they do the free trees that you can get planting. That is also done through our urban forestry. So to get more interest in that, that would be through our Parks Board that actually runs that, and that would be a great opportunity to get more information. But it is a really great program. It is additional revenue source that helps us make sure that we prioritize trees and planting, and so that when we do lose the amazing trees that we have some that are going up as well. And so it's a great team that are very much talented and all about trees. Hopefully that was helpful, or at least touch the surface of it.
Cheryl, would you move the mic up?
Sure.
Don't worry about the water.
Okay.
Move it up because they want to be able to make sure you're more in the light. That's good. That's good.
Okay. I thought I just sparkle. What's
Next
going on?
section.
Sorry.
Can you change the lights back so we can see?
Yeah.
These lights are too bright now and we can't see her.
Don, can you just put them on the, just show just up here in the front, just the way you had before is
I
fine.
tried to do that, and they said it's one or the other.
So we'll have to tolerate it. It's modern technology. So, next question, please. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hi.
So it's been since the 1990s since there was a major update of Finley Market,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're experiencing tens of thousands of visitors every week, rivaling any of the sports venues which get billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any interest in looking in at what would be relevant to update and grow the market and take advantage of this wonderful flow they have?
Have you been in my office? What's going on? Actually, we just had a meeting with Finley Market, their new leadership team, which is, they are great. Finley Market is starting to have their a fundraising campaign because they do understand that they want to undergo a major renovation, and the city is definitely happy to partner with that. So they're very early, and it's going to be, the goal would be for it to be obviously city coming in with capital dollars, in addition to they're going to be having a huge fundraising effort that's going to take the public. But yes, we do appreciate and love our Finley Market and understand how important it is, and we are going to be partners in that. So you should be hearing something from that pretty soon. Absolutely.
Next question? Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I really appreciate what you're doing with the railroad money and having that dashboard. I understand for other funds it's a much more manual process through my records requests and different conversations. How long will it take to get the other funds and even like full-time employee allocation to census track even, because that's what private sector is doing right now based on census geocode?
Yeah. Well, you figure with the Cincy on track, oh yeah, so that was a long question, Amber. Okay, so essentially she was, the transparency that we're doing with the dashboard for the railroad, how long is it gonna take to essentially take with employees and other funds that are outside the railroad to be able to track them down to probably the employees and the service, what you all see, probably the public, more transparency on other funds, essentially. That's going to take several different years as well, because even for the unpacking of the railroad dollars, what we noticed is that where it hit the departments, it sometimes got moved and switched depending on ordinances and all that stuff and all the moving apart, right? So we're going to have to take line by line, and we would have to start somewhere. So say, for instance, if you're talking about, I won't even talk about my utilities, but if you, I don't know, give an example of transportation roads, we would probably have to look at the general capital fund. We would have to look at when was the project awarded. We would then have to track project by project, bit by bit. And as you see, it's going to take a very time-extensive process to do that. We do have site working groups that we were able to do that with the Cincy on Track. What we did was we specifically said we need to trace railroad dollars, how they spent, and figure out to make sure that moving forward we code it specifically. We would have to break apart the specific type of business, and we would have to put it in our site group, which is our strategic initiative teams group. And what we do is we take very big problems of the city, and we take several different departments and we stick them essentially in a room, and the only thing they do is work on that problem. And so we would have to do that at the fund level. Hopefully I'll be here for a long time and we don't have management changes, or there is an administration that we have continuously to where people will take what we're doing with Cincy on Track and be able to mimic that throughout the organization. But Amber, as you know, Cincinnati turnover in our office it is very rapidly changing. We are a very talented city, and so you're here, but then there's opportunities that come, right? And so as long as we can get the bones of what we did with Cincy on Track and be able to get a plan through legacy planning to where people are gonna go next, that would be the goal, so that somebody can take the work we're doing and just keep on following along the line. But that's gonna take years of commitment.
Lady right over, did you still want to ask a question?
So hypothetically, if you're looking at revenue streams for the city, federal being a big one, the dollars have been spent, and bipartisan infrastructure law money, 1.3 trillion, expires in 2026, and the city's selling assets like the railroad. Where does that leave us 10 years down the road, 5, 10, 20 years down the road to fund operating?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there was a lot of numbers about the railroad and assets being sold and things like that. What does it look like for a legacy for how the city looks at operating 10 years down the road? And so to answer that, what we are now incorporated, a part of the administration, is what has happened in the past is that there has been ask to add things to city administration or to city offerings without asking how much it costs. This council and this mayor has been very supportive of us saying how much does something cost and how do we pay for it. There's gonna have to be really intentional, just like with businesses, what you're seeing is happening. It's not always inflation as well, don't get me wrong, there's inflation that's happening, but people are also rising price because of what it costs to deliver it, right? In the city, we are starting to have to do that. We're looking at something and saying, hey, how much does this cost? For instance, parking. We lost a lot of, I'm gonna be honest, but we did a terrible job of parking enforcement. We didn't have enough, we didn't dedicate and prioritize people to make sure that people are parking legally. We didn't have enough bodies. We didn't have, and then on the back end, we didn't make sure that we were supervising enough to make sure it's deployed effectively, right? But that is something that the mayor and council said that we're okay with doing. We understand that parking is an issue, it leads to public safety, and we want you to put resources behind that, right? So we were able to get bodies. So but that then leads to ticket revenues that help us pay for the positions that we get, instead of just putting bodies and then saying that, okay, we're just gonna leave it there. Parking is a problem, but we don't want you to do anything to tickets, because at the end of the day, just provide it and make it make sense. Like, figure it out, city manager. So what we have to do is, and what we have been doing, is making very intentional moves on deploying things. For example, assessment, ticket tax. When you guys have, and this is, I know this may make you guys want to itch, but like, their venues, all of the things that happen, Taylor Swift, FC, all of the tickets that are going on, we literally had not raised the fee that the city gets on those ticket sales. We left so much money on the table for people that came in, that not necessarily Cincinnatians to come see Taylor Swift, because we weren't getting money for it, right? But we had a whole department that is now taking care of our permitting to make sure people are safe and they have enough details and all that stuff. So here we go with a ticket tax that had not, it's assessment, a special assessment that has not been raised in decades. So we said we need to raise that. That allows us to be able to be in a position to where we're now deploying something and we're getting resources to help pay for the people that do the job. And so for me, that is making smart decisions like that and saying, do you want to make this? Like, do you want to make this decision? Is this a priority? How much does it take to offer the service, and are we going to pay for it to make sure? And that's the operations. That's the people behind the jobs, right? The police officers, all those things. The people that you see every day, that takes operations to be able to do. There's capital, but then there's the operations of the things that you see, feel, and touch that make the city beautiful every single day. We have to start doing things that tell them to do the job, but also having means for them to be able to pay for it so they can do their jobs, and have wages that make them stay at the jobs, because turnover costs. Right now, we're saving a lot of money on vacancies because we have a lot of city jobs and a lot of opportunities that pay great, have great resources, but we're competing with the private sector. So we have to pay people appropriately. Guess what we're investing in? A classification study. That will take all of the sit-down employees, say this is the work they're doing, and are we being competitive? Because there's cost when you have those vacancies, because things aren't getting done and people are moving to Cincinnati, right? So we're prepared to get the information in front of us and say, how much does this cost and what do we need to do and how do we plan appropriately to do that? And those are the decisions that we're making here. So it's not a one-shot answer, but that's part of it.
Okay, lady right here.
Okay, thank you. Could you comment on the importance of civic engagement in decision-making and all the ways that citizens can be involved and engaged?
Yes, so this is the way that I look at it. Can you, I feel like my active listening. Comment on civic engagement and the importance of civic engagement. I'm trying to summarize as best as possible. So I came from the city of North College Hill, population of 10,500 people. And when I tell you I could not get 1 or 2 people to come to a council meeting, it was just not happening. And from that, I was very frustrated, and there was times when I would actually work with the superintendent to take my council meetings to the school board, to the schools, so that I can again trap people into being engaged, right? Because what better way than to work with the superintendent and have people going to the school board, and then they then come and they're here with the city council meeting, right? And so for me, coming to the city of Cincinnati, believe it or not, it was, and I'm going to do not play this, if anybody's recording me, play this back to me, but it was actually a breath of fresh air to see that people actually participated in their government, right? And so for me, the only thing that I knew that I wanted to do is make it easy as much as possible for people to do that. So first of all, there's often times where you're going to get, first of all, there's surveys that we have. When I talk about the community survey, that goes out once a year to tell us how we're doing. And it is random because we do not know who's going to answer those questions, but don't think it's spam. We do it every single year to see how we're doing and to get honest feedback, first of all. That happens. Secondly, you will see a public engagement. If you see Department of Transportation, we have a community engagement policy that we adopted throughout the city that then is prescriptive, and it's the city manager's community engagement policy, which means that every department now has to go out in the community and engage in their area on specific touch points, whether it's projects, whether it's street projects, different things, right? So if you see a meeting that says, whether it's working through neighborhoods that often has engagement sessions for you to come in with, there might be Zooms, there may be touch points where you may see, we have a great 2 young, it's Unique and Jeremiah, they're part of our city manager's their engagement team. they will probably be in coffee shops. And if they come up to you asking you just quick touch points of questions, that is them trying to get engagement. Because everybody doesn't want to come to City Hall. You have the public meetings that we have to notify. Those are usually very stuffy projects, but it may be a project you're interested in. Those have to, by law, be notified, right? And then you have your council meetings. There's community, there's the public comment in the council meetings that you can come to. And trust me, the house is packed every Wednesday. I sit through it. Well, I listen, I'm there. I am there. That is a great way to participate. We also have, let's see, surveys, there's online, if you go to planning and community engagement, Google that in your, and I'm talking about a lot with, technology, so forgive me. But if you Google the planning and community engagement, you will probably get a slew of different things that will be coming up as touch points for you to engage in the city. And we're continuously trying to revise that. We have council members who are wanting to have text messages that are going out just for one way, but you have to prescribe. So we have Rave Alert that anybody can subscribe to. That is a part, and that is very helpful for us because if there's any notification that goes out, if there's something that's shelter in place, it's important for you to subscribe to that so that you get those notifications depending on where you are in the city. But that helps me determine whether text messaging will work. Because if I have 311 Rave Alert, and I have a Rave Alert, and I know people can subscribe to that, and not many people do that, and this is talking about your safety, then it says, hey, if I can't get you to talk, is this good money that I need to spend on a one way for you to hear about public meetings, right? So just so you know, when we're doing these things, it's very intentional. I use data to determine where the money needs to be deployed. So Rave Alert is a very good system that could lead to other means of engagement, but if people don't use it, it makes no sense for me to use your dollars to do it, right? Also, we're in the middle of updating our website. There's going to be engagement sessions with that. And that is, how do you receive information? North College Hill, I had to personally be on the back end of doing a website, $35,000 a year, and trying to figure out a way that people click and navigate menus. And I'm telling you what, it is so difficult. The way that I may go to a website is completely differently than you and you and you and you, right? But that engagement will give us information on how you and what you want to see your website to do. But we're spending money on that too. But look, to be honest, we're learning and we're continuously opening and problem solving and figuring out ways that people receive things as much as possible. We also depend on our community councils to also deploy information as well. They are a great trusted source for us. When there's something, because when the council members need to hear something, they're going to community councils. When our Department of Economic Development needs to work, have a project with a developer coming, they're going to the community councils. So just so you know, if you're not as engaged with community council, it is a very good idea to do so, especially if you're curious about what projects are going on in the city.
Next question, gentleman over on the right.
You mentioned homeless issue. I remember seeing in Houston the incredible work they've done, how effective some of the work with digitalizing and managing the situation there. I'm very curious to see what is Cincinnati doing now, what it's planning to do, and have you looked to some of those sorts of cities or other organizations to say, what can we learn from that?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, we are happy to steal. Actually, I'm just now hosting, actually in October through Blink, I'm hosting the Large Cities City Managers Conference. And what that is 44 of the largest city managers that we come into Cincinnati to sit around the table to talk about what are you doing well and how can we steal that, right? Homelessness will be a very big topic on that issue. One of the things that we have done is the city manager's office in my tenure has grown rapidly. And one of the things is we've put dedicated positions to helping with the homeless. So not only that is ARC, I don't know if you've seen the alternate response to service. That is it's an alternate response to the police officers when we see mentally ill, unhoused people that show up, right? So we've invested in that and we've grown that. When we started, it was a $150,000 investment every year. We started from just one vehicle to now we're at, I think the last budget, I think we're growing to 4 or 6, right? So that's first thing. Secondly, we have a place-based manager She is a social worker that actually is inside the city manager's office. Her key job is to go out to the public and work with and do touches with unhoused. She offers them resources. She has a, her first job is to see if they need mental health support, if they need food. There's 3 to 4 touches that she can do before we then have to escalate, right? The goal is to make sure we're being compassionate at every level, and if you want a home, you can get that. We have plenty of partners. There is plenty of partners who are working with us alongside the homeless for people to go, but the problem is a lot of people you're seeing, there's mental illness in effect, and they just don't want to go indoors, and that's where the issue is that we're dealing with. But Brooke's department is now going from 1 to now 3. So that is something where we know is that human touch is going to be needed to help people and figure out, let them know that she has to build that trust, and she has to get them to go from the streets to a actual place, a permanent spot. But those touches, it just doesn't happen overnight. And what I would tell you is we're learning across the country, and we're hoping resources will still continue to help support that, because we do a lot of grants that help out with federal funding with that. But in the same sense, we're going to be committed to continuously evolving. And what we've seen, unfortunately right now, is we are dealing in a situation to where neighboring cities' laws criminalize a lot of the unhoused. And that is causing some issues to come over to Cincinnati. And we've had to really aggressively increase our touches on that, and we will be committed to doing that.
Question, I got 2 more questions. Liz Keating and then Bill Menrath. Liz?
Your team has been globally recognized for how well you use data and data-driven decisions, and you've used it in really innovative ways to have much more effective and efficient government. You touched on it earlier, but I think it's really important for more people to better understand SITE. Can you give a quick overview on SITE so more people can understand how much you've moved to really operating more closer like a business than government?
So first of all, I couldn't do this without, and even with former Councilwoman Keating, and when she was a councilwoman, allowing me to be able to make hard decisions. What they told me is we're prepared to make hard decisions, and let us know what that is, city manager decisions that we need to make. And so with that was data decision, data, I can't talk. Making decisions based on the data, right? And where the resources going, and are they a good use of dollars? So what we found out though is there's decisions that departments are making in silos. They're only looking at it from their lens. They're asking for budget options and saying we need this, but not having the data to support that. And so through performance management, which we all embrace, what we said was what we're going to do is we're going to, first of all, it's not just going to be, I want this. It's going to make sure that we have the data to support whether it's a good decision. So it's not easy to sometimes tell a story. I keep on telling, what stories are you trying to tell in your department? What do we want the public to know? And what do we want them to know that what you're doing? And let's find a way to put numbers behind it on how is it working or how is it not. It's been a complete culture shift. And so what SITE does is it's kind of a way where we get several different members of a team working around a group, working in a room that are helping problem solve on difficult decisions. From dumping, for instance, we have a SITE group that is talking about the dumping and the litter issues that are going on in our city. And that one is going on for it's been going on for a year now, I would say. But what we're doing is we're taking the different departments, we're saying, first of all, how much are you, the PLAC, for instance, that's private lot abatement. That's different than public service. And guess what? The difference with public service, and they all go to the same areas, but one will stop here and one will then go there. And I'm gonna shout out Amber in a sense because she has definitely seen some of that stuff happening. And so what SITE has done is allow us to unpack, see where the resources are going, where the dollar's being spent, and then does it make sense and how can we find ways to make it more efficient? And then the departments are supposed to tell me, like, hey, this is the data shows. The data shows for instance, if you give me a time and you say that I want to make advancements on, I want to move permitting, I want to move it from 7 days to 6, but I see that you're meeting that metrics and you're asking for more resources for a position, well, I'm telling you, you're meeting the metrics already, so why do you need more positions? I'm not going to pay for it. And so we've been able to establish that through our SITE because what we did was we said, this is the problem, this is the solution, this is the metric that you're trying to meet, and now let's break it down to the data for you to tell the story. Now, what we've done is we've advanced it even. We have midway, we have budget check-ins. So if you were able to show that the data needs you to have positions, well, then I want to see how you're performing, because I'm going to deploy you those dollars. But mid check-in, I need to see if you're doing what you're supposed to, and what you're and how that is really showing up with the taxpayers. And you better stand before me and let me know what you have done, and if there's a delay, then you need to tell me what that delay is. If there's an inefficiency, then you let me know how you're solving that inefficiency. And so what we have done is through performance, our data dashboards, we have an Office of Data Analytics. Eric is actually on his way to Berlin to speak at a conference because of our data decision matrix. The dashboards are all transparent. You can see what we're doing, and it's just showing exactly where our city dollars are going, and to make sure we're being intentional with that. And when we talk about how do we support operations moving into the future, utilizing data, being able to show our receipts as how this is a good decision, and showing where the data is going and what is it saying, how much are we doing with it, how much does it cost, does it make sense for us to continue to do that? That's how we weather the storm when it comes into difficult times in my mind. So it's been taking years. I know probably Councilman Keating, former Councilman, can do that way more intellectually, but in the same sense, it's just important, and that's what the private sector is doing, and we have incorporated in City Hall, and it has been a significant culture shift for us.
Okay, I think Bill had a question, but before he asks a question, I want to ask one myself. What does voting look like in the city of Cincinnati? Have you been able to see any performance? For instance, is African American voting a higher percentage, or youth voting is my biggest concern? Young fellas and young women voting. We're out here, though. We have a lot of gray hair people here.
Yeah.
We're out there voting, but we need more young people voting.
Fortunately, but unfortunately, probably you'll get a better response to that with the elected official side and the Board of Elections, because I don't touch on that portion of it. I just know who won and who didn't. And then I'm looking at the data to see who my next bosses is. So unfortunately, I don't know on that part.
I think this is the last question. Bill?
So I want to thank you so much for coming here tonight. It's been very educational. I know you could have done other more enjoyable things, so I really appreciate you coming. You talked about the railroad fund and all the great things that it can be used for to better our community. There's a fellow in Mount Lookout, Tom Brinkman, who wants to change the charter, and instead of using that money for bettering the community, he wants to reduce property taxes. Is there any possible way that he can accomplish that?
Okay, and then there was always one doozy question. So what I will tell you is that the council and everyone was very intentional working with the state to make sure that the state also is protecting on how those funds can be used. And in the state, it is specifically said that it is used for capital funds for city assets, essentially. I'll paraphrase. And so, say for instance, if that charter voters were to say, yeah, I want that to happen, right? Well, we still have the state issue that would be out there. And so that would be something for my city solicitors and the lawyers to kind of think of. But I will tell you that even if the popular vote said yes, you would have to deal with the state issue, and I don't have an answer on that one.
He probably has a lot of friends in Columbus since he was there for 8 years.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm a little worried about that.
But what I will tell you is that we are very committed, and we have a great plan on how it's going to show up in city assets, and the goal is for our kids. I'm trying to get my kids from Nashville back to Cincinnati. They go to school there, and so I'm hoping that these railroad dollars will be there for them. So that is the goal for us.
I think in closing, I want to say I was city administrator in 3 different cities and townships for 31 years. And one of the things that I've noted with Sheryl is she's direct, she's clear, she's responsive, she's constantly on the go, and she's dedicated to our city. So I think with the 3 city managers I worked with years ago, I think that Cheryl's one of the best people that's come to Cincinnati, and she's the appropriate person for this time of our complicated life in Cincinnati. So I want to thank Cheryl very much for being here.